If doctors are expected to care for everyone else, who is teaching the leaders how to care for them? Today we're talking about leadership and mental health, not as corporate buzzwords, but as human imperatives. Because when leaders forget their bedside manners with their own people, culture erodes. And when mental health stays silent, performance suffers. That's why I'm honored to welcome Seung Paik, author of Leadernomics, award-winning educator, storyteller, and veteran, where econ disrupts life and leadership pricelessly, and Adam Nemer, author of Simple Mental Health, keynote speaker and global leadership consultant who challenges leaders to normalize mental health at work so performance is unleashed and lives are transformed.
Mhm.
If you're a doctor, healthcare leader, or patient, you belong here. I'm Kim Downey, and this is Stand Up for Doctors Conversations at the Intersection of Connection, Courage, and the Future of Healthcare. Thanks for joining us today, Sung and Adam.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, it's great to be here, Kim.
You're welcome. And what would you most like our audience to know about you as we begin our conversation? Sung, would you like to go first?
Sure. So I'm Sung. I'm the author, founder of Leadernomics, and it's the blend between leadership and economics coming together through the framework of a human endeavor perspective, human-centered perspective of economics. And I spent 25 years in the United States Air Force. I called myself the CFO with body armor because I was in the world of money and resources and always trying to get what the warfighter needed in a timely basis. So that's what I did for 25 years. My wife and I retired with three children, moved out to San Francisco, and we've been here ever since. And then I republished the book this past year, and now I'm going around as many places as I can, letting people know about the importance of leadernomics.
Well, I love that very much, especially that it's human centered, and I can't wait to dive in more to that. And Adam, what would you like us to know about you?
Oh, my bottom line story is, I was a 20-year Kaiser Permanente executive, CFO, and operations executive. And I left there about 4 years ago to start an organization, Simple Mental Health, to encourage leaders to normalize the topic of mental health in their organizations to help improve performance and transform lives.
Mm.
Now, of course, what I really want, in the end, I really am just a dad, but that's my full-time job. This other thing's my side job.
Well, I love that. And you had sent me your book, Simple Mental Health, and I
Oh,
had dog-eared a number of pages. And I always like our guests to share a powerful story. People remember the stories most of all. So, Adam, you can choose to share what you wish, and I don't know if it's the going to be the story that you share in the book about your advisor. When he called you into his office.
yeah, I guess my the one that I would share is give you a little background to set this up. As a 29-year-old young guy, getting groomed to run my family business, I found my dad after he died of suicide, right? Didn't get the help that I needed. Had a 17-year career where I got sicker and sicker and sicker and sicker and sicker every day and had no idea, right? I checked every box of severe mental illness, but hallucinations. And I had no, as I was like a CFO of their Northwest Health for, I mean, I'm like running their health plan as checking all these boxes.
Mhm.
And it's background data point number one. Data point number two is after 17 years of worsening mental illness while growing this career, I was doing a welfare check on my mom, and I found her after she had passed away. She didn't die of suicide, but she struggled with substance use disorder and severe mental illness for years. And she didn't die from living well, I guess you would say. And you know, unbeknownst to me, after I found her, I had slipped into a state of complete emotional collapse. Like I had no idea, right? But all of a sudden I started showing up for work. And by then I'd been promoted and I was running our health plan as in the Northwest. And um, I started wearing Levi's to work, t-shirts, flip-flops. I swear it looked like I was going to the beach, not going to work every day, right? And I was mean as hell to everybody around me, right? Oh, and then I had hair on my hair, and it was like growing out like Einstein. I mean, my shirt was untucked. I looked like shit. It was not good, right? I'm running the Kaiser Health Fund, and again, I'm mean as hell to everybody. So this is how I am, and this is the setup, and I have no idea. All I knew when this story begins is I found my dad's suicide. I found my mom. Life sucks. That was the only thing I knew. All that other stuff, I had no idea, right? So one morning, I show up for work at 8 a.m. and there's like this meeting that is on my appointment book for 8:15 with my boss, this national Kaiser leader who happened to be in Portland, right? And I show up at his office and I'm like, I have no idea why he's calling me in. And I walk in and again, this is 3 weeks after I had slipped into this emotional collapse. And he goes, so how you doing, Adam? And I had just worn this happy. And I go, I'm doing great. He's like, yeah, I know about your dad's suicide now, and I know about you finding your mom's passing the other week. Are you seeing a therapist? Is that why you're doing so well? Yeah, I didn't see a therapist. I'm doing great. He goes, well, Adam, do you know the signs to look for in yourself in case you might need to get some help down the road? As I say no, he pulls out of his pocket the business card for Kaiser's EAP program, slides it across the desk to me, and he's like, man, why don't you give EAP a call? It can't hurt. You've had these traumatic experiences in your life, and you might as well learn the signs in case sometime down the road you might need to get some help. I go see the EAP counselor the next day. That's where in that office where I really crashed as a human being. That 5-minute conversation helped change my life. Now, here's the thing about the story that blows my mind, right? And which is really kind of the basis of what we try to do now at Simple Mental Health is, so this national leader who had me come see him on a Monday morning, the day before on Sunday, he's sitting in a mental health first aid class at his church. Can't believe the universe works like this. He's sitting in his church on Sunday in a mental health first aid class. They're going over the signs that someone could be struggling with their well-being. And he's like, Adam, 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 Adam. Oh my God, Nemer's in a lot of trouble. Next part of the class, and they teach you how to approach somebody in a safe, thoughtful, non-judgmental manner. He came up with an idea of handing me the business card DAP the next day, right? So we all have physical health literacy in our leadership toolboxes, right? Song Kim, if someone was choking at a board meeting, we'd all know how to help them.
Right.
All that happened here was a senior leader at an 80 billion. David went to church on Sunday. In a couple hours, put a little bit of mental health literacy in his professional toolbox. The next day, in a 5-minute conversation, changed my life. It is the most, when I think about all the stories and experiences of my life, it's hard to reflect on one that has had such a positive, profound impact on it in that one 5-minute conversation.
Right. Well, and at first, of course, I want to say that I'm sorry for everything that you've been through. It's a lot. And I just have to thank you so much because when I interview doctors, I say every time a doctor shares their story, another doctor feels less alone. But here you are, leaders, and to have an executive be willing to share their story to help their colleagues and to help other people, like this is how we'll change things. Like every conversation, chips away at the stigma, and it's so important. So I'm so grateful to you for being willing to share your story, and you do, share your story in the book. And also I approached my own church after reading this about seeing if we can do something about that mental first aid. I love that, and that he was willing to be a little vulnerable or a little uncomfortable, and that it did literally change your life and get you on a good path. So thank you for sharing that. And Sung, anything you'd like to respond to what Adam has shared so far, and if you'd like to share a story of your own.
Adam, I so appreciate that. And I think the first thing that comes to my mind is that amidst the tragedy, sorrow, um, there's redemption. You found redemption. And the redemption is coming by way of the work and the service that you're doing now. And, that always to me has the not the end of the story message that amidst tragedy, that you as the son can now be in a place where not only in your own healing journey, but that you can have that generosity and that mindset to bring that type of healing and that type of service to the world and to others. That's redemption in action that's unfolding. And so I applaud you. I give a tremendous amount of admiration, and respect for what you're doing in your service to our society and to our communities. And yeah, I think it just speaks volumes about the journey that you've been on.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, it's funny that Kim, I came across your platform by way of Josh Hartzell.
Oh,
Josh, yeah, Josh is someone who is in the thought leadership space, a researcher himself, and I appreciated his work, and because he's in the health field as a leader, and also in the military, as I've been. As I was engaging with him on LinkedIn, I came across your platform and somewhat by accident learned of your story and what a powerful story it is. And that's that whole realm by which you're now serving and highlighting and elevating the needs of those who are in the business of providing care and healthcare and physicians. There's such a similarity with other industries and services, and also with the military, right? Because I'm in that place. I've been in that place. You have now given your life to this audience and to this community where people are in the business of serving. They're in the business of serving. They're in the business of caring. They're in the business of leading. And they're on a pedestal, on a platform where there's a confluence of where they're a human being like anybody else, but we elevate them to this platform of, well, they're the expert, they're the provider, they serve, they care. And so there is a confluence of social pressures and of even personal stigma that's tied to all of that, that makes one want to say, yeah, I'm leading. I'm example setting. I'm the model. So how can I bear forth vulnerability and weakness? How can I be the one, as I am the one providing care? How can I be the one to be transparently saying, I need some care. I need some help. And the military was the same way, right? We have a bit of a machismo stigma, right? Never say die, push through at all cost. That which doesn't kill us only makes us stronger. And when you have that type of a culture and an environment, and then on top of that, as we are constantly promoting and inspiring the development of leadership, and you're in that place and platform of providing care, the first thing that goes is self-care.
mm-hmm.
And it's almost somewhat virtuous, right? Like we view it as a virtue to continuously care for others, but it's a subtle, steady drop off to where you get to that place where you're no longer caring from a place of abundance, but you're caring from a place of quick emptiness. And so, I'm a writer. I'm an author. I've been an economist my whole life. And so I preach this stuff, I live this stuff. And there is a particular principle that many have heard and they know, but they don't quite know how to apply. And it's the principle of diminishing returns, right? And the way diminishing returns sounds off is anything, anything and everything, even all of the good things. At some point, the goodness begins to taper off. Everything in life has a diminishing point, right? And so, whether that's even good things like exercise, if I exercise an hour, that's a wonderful thing. But there's even a point with exercise. If I get to hour number two or hour number three, now I'm hitting a place of fatigue where I might be entering that zone of accident, danger, injury, safety issues, right? So even something as good as health and fitness can hit a point of diminishing returns. And I think that's the area where we, as people who are trying to do exceptional things, caring and leading, it's hard to be self-aware of when that point of diminishing returns is happening. And the fascinating thing about this principle of diminishing returns is that as we may incline somewhat in our performance and in our productivity and our quality, as it begins to diminish, there's still a totality of growth. We're still doing some good, but
Hmm.
it's diminishing.
Hmm.
And what we don't see is that it's diminishing because it's still growing in totality. But then when it plateaus, here's the scary part. The principle of diminishing returns shows that once you've plateaued, it doesn't decline in the same subtle, gradual state in which it inclined. As a matter of fact, once it plateaus, it can go off a cliff.
Hmm.
And that's the essence of a principle of economics, where I bring into the fact of leadernomics that even in self-awareness, if we cannot begin to stop or seek help in the point of diminishing, if we're always trying to reach that plateau, what we don't realize is that if we're at that place of plateau and we haven't sought care, or if that's when we're finally seeking care, we're on that of not just subtle decline, but of cliff. And so it's so important, not only in the way of self-awareness or what I like to call self-care, but that's why in the military, we so often emphasized this notion of buddy care, right? You
Mhm.
got to have both because self-awareness is often going to be overlooked in the process of leading and serving others. But it's in that buddy care, it's in that community care where they can interject, they can intervene and say, hey, listen, you need to take a break. You need a rest. Even to the point where in the military, we would mandate it, right? If a
Mhm.
pilot just got off of the flight line after a mission, it was mandated that before they go on another mission, that they get a certain amount of solitude and rest, right? Why? Because we understand how people function. They don't know that zone of self-awareness and they don't know that you might be near that precipice. And so sometimes it even needs to be mandated, the hard love of buddy care, right? So
Mhm.
these are some of the things that I've experienced. And then I have so many personal stories where I call myself the chief of diminishing returns because I've
Mhm.
failed so frequently. And I think maybe if I could just one of the places where I failed miserably was I was a young lieutenant serving a team. We were in an exercise in California. And anybody who's been to Southern California, not Southern, but Central California, in the middle of summer, it's not the coastline breeze and winds of San Francisco. It was about 115 degrees. I was
Mhm.
in a station at a Beale Air Force Base, home of the U-2 aircraft. And we were going through an operational readiness inspection. And I was a young officer, maybe 24 years old, leading a team of 6 people. And we were suited up in our chem gear. So imagine 120 degrees. We're
Mhm.
suited up in our chem gear. And I was in that place where I'm leading, I'm
Mhm.
serving,
Mhm.
I'm the one caring for others. And I started experiencing heat exhaustion.
Mhm.
And I just fought through it. I battled through it.
Mhm.
And it progressively got worse. And I was well beyond the point of diminishing returns. As a matter of fact, I was either at plateau or I was right on the precipice.
Mhm.
And then one of my guys looked at me, and I never will forget that look. He looked at me like we both had our chem suits on, so we've got our gas masks on. And he's looking at me with this strange look, and I can see through my goggles as I'm looking into his goggles, and he's just looking at me like this. And he's like, "Sir, sir." And I said, "Yes." He's like, "Sir, you need to sit down." And I said, "Why?" He's like, "You, my goggles were filling up with perspiration.
Uh-huh.
And in the midst of heat exhaustion, My body was starting to lose tremendous amount of water, and I didn't realize it. I was perhaps this close to going into shock. And
Right.
so they laid me down. Next thing I knew, all five of them are literally declothing me,
Uh,
and they're taking off my boots. When they took off my chem boot, one of the guys turned it over, and out of the boot just came like filled with perspiration, with sweat. And then they went through the process of first aid, buddy care, and got me back to a place of hydration and uh, carted off to the emergency room. But I had gone well past the point of diminishing returns, a situation where I was in the danger zone. And thank God there was somebody there looking at me and saying, "Oh my gosh, you are in a bad state." But that's what happens. That's what happens, I think, so oftentimes when we have the confluence of the social pressures, the platform, the position, the leadership, we're in a position of care, and we don't know that we're diminishing in the process to the point of plateau. So yeah, not good.
Thank you for sharing that and explaining it. I'm sure all of our listeners will be nodding their head, in acknowledgement and agreement. And I love that you gave a shout out to our friend, Dr. Josh Hartzell, who wrote his own book about caring leadership. And that's what we're talking about today. And also, I've said too that I feel like doctors should have a buddy system like they do in the military. And everybody, right, needs somebody checking on them. So Adam, anything you wish to respond to what Sung said? And I know you refer to your book as like the playbook that you wish you had earlier in your career, how leaders can link mental health to real outcomes like ROI, retention, and performance.
Well, I'll tell you, I was taking some notes as someone was talking, and what I mean, you can't what I wrote circled and like the thing that I'm like, oh, I cannot wait to shamelessly quote you on this all the time is, it's a I mean, this stuff's not rocket science. Sometimes it's like the shit we learned in preschool. I mean, this stuff is not complicated stuff, right? So what you said, I just thought was a nice turn of phrase was leading from a place of self-abundance, not emptiness, right? For the love of the world, you got to have food you don't eat, you don't have money, you can't run your hospital. You don't have food, you can't run your system. If you don't exercise, you can't have good physical health. If you don't have some notion of what you do to take care of your own personal psychological self well-being, you need to, it's why we are told to put the for the love of the universe, put the gas mask on, or put the mask on your not a gas mask, the mask on yourself first,
Yeah,
then your kid on the plane, right? I
yeah,
mean,
that's right.
you can't help lead other people if you're not really showing up that as your best self.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
and you
it's
know,
all funny, a funny thing that kind of build on this for a second.
yeah.
So 20 years in healthcare, I think the irony is physicians can have a perspective. Oh, it's not us, it's everybody else.
Mm,
Right. And it's like I have a friend of my dad's is a retired urologist. And when I started all this work 6, 7 years ago, we went for a walk and I was telling him this stuff. And I told him, 20% of Americans every year experience a clinically diagnosable mental illness. He goes, why is that? I go, he goes, it's worse than that. I said, why? He goes, well, because people like me, doctors, executives, we're probably like 1 or 2%. So
mm.
everyone else, he goes, it's everyone else. I'm like, no, 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 no. Y'all are worse, man.
Yeah, yeah.
But just that sense of I'm an educated, I'm a doctor, I'm a CEO, I'm a CFO, I'm a general, it comes with this sense of, well, it's not me.
Yeah, it's funny too, because like in each of these cultures, whether it's military boot camp, whether if for medicine, it's their medical school, their intern year, or their residency, there's this rite of passage, right? And that rite of passage has required in it a certain level of perseverance, grit, can do, push through mindset that's poured into physicians, military members, you name it, right? Every industry that has that aspect of kind of like persistence.
Banking,
Mhm.
legal,
Yeah,
accounting. It's
yeah,
all of them.
it's there.
I'm telling you,
Yeah,
if you run a 7-Eleven store, you see yourself in what you just said. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt
yeah,
you. Keep going.
yeah,
Yeah, you're right. It's
but
everybody.
and it starts early. So it's not like we're getting this for the first time in our 50s. We're getting it in our young 20s when we're still impressionable. And so it leaves all of us with that. And there is a part of it that's good because there is a push through mentality that's so important, especially in life, health, and safety. But then there's also the imbalance. Like if there isn't somebody or some community that comes along at some point and says, "Hey, listen, that was important for you to learn that and to get through that culture of perseverance and grit because you're going to need it in times and in seasons of your profession. But oh, by the way, this isn't always. This isn't what it's always meant to be. Like you cannot do these 15-hour days regularly for the rest of your life and still maintain some level of mental health with your family and with yourself. There needs to be something like that that I think is coupled with these professions shortly thereafter that season of grit and rite of passage that needs to happen. That needs to be brought in. That's that bedside manner that Kim's kind of like bringing up is like, you got to get back to that bedside manner of nature of physicians need to be given bedside manner, just like they're preached that they must give it to their patients. They need to receive some of that in the training, just as we do in the military and just as we do in any profession that has in part grit and persistence as a part of its culture.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like we could talk for hours. And as we are winding down, Adam says when leaders normalize the topic of mental health, performance gets unleashed and lives transformed, usually including their own. So I'm wondering, Adam, if you'd like to add anything to that or just like what your take home message would be for leaders listening to this.
My take home message for folk is 5-minute conversations beget 5-minute conversations, and they beget more 5-minute conversations. They beget people getting better. And when leaders, I actually think it's an accountability of a leader to share their story
Mm,
because it's so important. It's a different world today. We have a different expectation. Millennials and Gen Zers don't do this grit bullshit. That everything we just talked about, that's bullshit for a millennial and Gen Zer, right? And so what they want from leaders is sharing our stories. And
mm,
I'll leave you with one last notion. After I came back, after I saw the EP counselor, I took about 6 weeks off of work, starting antidepressants and all that and therapy. And when I came back to work, everyone's like, "Well, where the hell have you been?" Yeah, and other people,
Mhm.
you don't run a health plan and be gone for 6 weeks and don't tell anybody. So
Mhm.
I had an all hands meeting where we had a couple hundred people in the room and I shared with them all what was going on in my life, right? Had the head of mental health interviewed me and they all learned about dad's suicide, finding mom, how sick I was. They learned how through it was the love and attention at David that I started getting help. And it was a hard conversation. I was just beginning, I was just starting my therapeutic journey, right? Um, oh God, I looked like a broken kid standing in front of them answering these questions. But 2 days later, I go for a walk with this young kid on our team. He was in his mid-20s at the time. His name is Cameron. Uh, and as we're walking, he started to thank me. And I'm like, dude, why are you thanking me? He says, well, when I was a kid in grade school, I attempted suicide. And I tried therapy throughout middle school and high school, and it just didn't seem to stick. And I just always thought my life was going to be sad. And I know I don't want to die, but I just thought my life was always going to be sad. And then when I heard you, my boss's boss share that you were going through the same thing as I was, and even though it wasn't helping yet, you were sticking with cognitive therapy for the long haul. Uh, it inspired him at the time to try therapy again. And he had made a therapy session for 2 weeks later. I've spoken with it. We stay in touch. We spoke last September. I'm here to report 8 years later. Cameron's thriving, optimistic about life. He's like on his fourth promotion at work, surrounded by a great group of friends, happy. And I never thought as a leader that just by talking about my feelings, that to Sung's point earlier, talking about my feelings with people around me made me feel better. But it was the single thing that made me the most effective leader that I had ever could become. Just in that conversation, I never thought I could, as a CFO of a hospital, COO of a health plan, have someone say to me something like as personal and meaningful that you could impact someone's life like Cameron did for me that day.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, Adam, for sharing that. And these conversations change lives, and these conversations save lives. So, the impact, and you'll never fully know, either one of you, right, the impact you're making by having these conversations. So, just thank you so much. And, Sung, as we're wrapping up in a sentence or two, what's your take home action message for our audience today?
There's no badge of honor with persistent grit. There are seasons of grit, there are seasons of perseverance, but there must also be seasons of rest, and there must also be seasons of break. And there's no badge of honor with it. And so just my encouragement is self-care is preached, but it's hard.
Mhm.
Buddy care is needed, coupled with self-care, because very few are able to implement self-care in a disciplined manner. And so it really does take a level of buddy care intervention to make self-care more applicable in life.
Yeah, thank you. That's perfectly said. And self-care, you do need to take care of yourself to take care of other people. So that's not to be understated. So I love you guys as healthcare leaders speaking to that, because leaders also need to take care of themselves. So, thank you again for being my guest, and we'll share all the links that you want, how people can reach out to you, links to your books in our show notes. And if today's conversation resonated with you, you'll find more stories like this in our White Coats book series. And I did want to spotlight in our most recent book, Dr. John Huff wrote a chapter, The Intentional Work of Leadership, How Small Acts of Care Build Trust and Culture in Healthcare, which is also very well dovetails to what we were talking about today. And for those called to go deeper, we'll be gathering this October at our inaugural physician retreat, and we'll be honored to have you join us. Links are in the show notes, including how to reach out to our guests. And if you'd like to support this work through sponsorship, I'd love to connect. And in closing, to move the needle in healthcare, we all need to raise our voices, and we all need to care about each other. We already know that doctors need to care about patients. Patients need to care about doctors too. So stand up, doctors, and let's stand up for doctors.
Mm, amen.
You're here.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Adam.
Thanks,
You're
Kim.
welcome.
Great to meet you.